Welcome to the Money Mindful podcast, where money mindset and life coach Meaghan Jean Smith, hey, that's me, teaches you how to transform your relationship to money and achieve your life goals so you can live a glorious, magnificent, delicious, awesome life and love being you. Hello and welcome to the Money Mindful podcast. I'm your host, Meaghan Jean Smith. So great to be with you here this week. I hope that you are having an amazing day. I'm going to talk to you today about what to do when you feel stressed about money. But before I get into that, I just have a little quick favor to ask you. If you are loving this show, and if you haven't done it already, the most amazing way that you can express that gratitude is to leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast, or just share it. Tell someone about it. Share this podcast with someone else. That is the most wonderful gratitude and feedback that you could possibly give me by telling someone else about this podcast. All right. Thank you. Thanks a million ahead of time. I really appreciate that. Okay. Let's just dive straight in. What to do when you feel stressed about money. Okay. So something that came up that was, I guess reoccurring on the uncapped sessions that I've just completed over the last 4 weeks is stress about money. And we did some coaching on it in the sessions. And I also had a moment with a colleague of mine when her partner had just landed a massive contract, and she was sharing with me how she felt like such relief, right? That her partner had landed this big contract because she's been so worried about money. Things have slowed down in business recently. It's been a bit quieter, and she has been spending a lot of time feeling stressed and worried about money. But not only has she been feeling stressed and worried about money, she's also kind of been making herself wrong for doing that. Because she shared with me, I really need to work on my money mindset stuff. Like, I know that I just get so stressed about this. And I really wanted to nip that in the bud with her straight away. And I want to do this with you too, is that sometimes when we're stressed or worried about money and we're into personal development, or we have a coach, or we're actively working on ourselves, we can have this little judgment gremlin creep in where it's like, I'm obviously need to work on my money mindset. I'm not very good at this. And I just want to say, hang on a minute, stop. I'm going to give you an analogy to help clear this up for you. It's kind of like saying when you don't have any food that, I just shouldn't be worried that, I don't have any food. I'm just going to mindset my way out of this lack of food. Right? I mean, it's connected to your survival, food, right? Like if you don't actually have food, that totally makes sense that you might be stressed or worried about it. I know this is an extreme example, but I'm just trying to lay it down for you. And you're not going to mindset your way out of not feeling stressed or worried about not having food. Like, it's a legit reason why you might be feeling stress in your body or concern. And it's exactly the same with money. Unless you live off the grid and you've got solar power and you've got your own amazing garden where you're living off the land, you need money, right, to survive in your day-to-day life. You use it to buy groceries. You use it to pay for your bills. You use it to put fuel in your car. It is so linked with your survival. So excuse me for a minute, can you be excused for feeling a little bit stressed or worried if you are in a period of time when you have less money? I mean, right now in Australia, and forgive me for those of you listening around the world, I'm not staying up to date with the events internationally, but I know in Australia our interest rates are rising, right? Significantly from where they were. I mean, the interest rates, what they are now, are kind of what used to be normal. But because we've had low interest rates for such a long period of time, lots of people are really feeling the financial strain, right? Mortgage repayments are going up. Just in general, things are more expensive. And so I just want to offer you some comfort. The very first thing that I would do is just acknowledge that you're worried and concerned, and don't make yourself wrong for feeling that way. Now, don't confuse that though with dwelling in it and rolling around in that worry and concern like you're rolling around in a pile of horse manure, okay? Which, by the way, I'm going to add in a little side story here. When I was a kid, I don't know if I've shared this on the podcast before, but as a young kid, my grandfather used to work in the garden a lot, and for some reason, I don't actually know why, he had a huge pile of horse manure in the garden, and whenever I would go and stay there, he would throw me into this pile of dried horse manure, and I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. I absolutely loved it, and now as an adult, I'm like, it's really interesting reflecting back on that and thinking about, wow, I loved being thrown in a pile of shit. That's something I could get into on a coaching session, but no, anyway, it just reminded me of that. And I'm just going to share that little piece of my childhood with you. Okay, I digress. Let's get back into it. So don't dwell in the worry, a concern, but don't make yourself wrong for feeling it. Okay, that is the very first step of what to do when you feel stressed about money. Give yourself some grace and compassion and acknowledge that this worry and concern feels very real for you, right? And I might just add that you might actually have plenty of money, and you might have savings in the bank, and you might be in a very stable position financially, and yet you're still stressed and worried about money because your financial situation may have changed. Right? Like maybe your income has decreased a little bit, or maybe you're not getting as many clients in your business as you used to get, right? So things can change and you can still be in a stable financial position, but be stressed about it because it's not what you're used to. Don't make yourself wrong for that either, right? Okay, sure, you're privileged, you're looked after, but it's natural and normal thing. It's a normal thing to have worry or concern or feel stressed come up when your financial survival, right? Like it's connected with survival, is questioned in any way, right? So be compassionate with yourself for that, but don't dwell on it. Now, the next thing I would do, how to actually stop the worry, is first of all, give yourself some comfort. And as I shared in Uncapped recently, like I will literally comfort myself, as in I will touch my body, like I might pat my arm, put my hands across my body and talk to myself and say, it's okay, Meaghan, it's all right. Like you're going to be okay. You're safe. I've got you. We're going to work this out, right? I will literally give myself comfort. Now that might feel weird to you. I don't know whether you feel comfortable talking to yourself or touching yourself in that way, but I recommend in whatever way feels appropriate for you, comfort yourself, right? Let yourself know you're going to be okay. It's okay. Now, then I would look at where you are financially safe. Like I'd actually look at the evidence, right? Do you have food in your cupboard right now? Do you have a roof over your head? Do you have friends or family that you can reach out to if something happened? Because, most people, the demographic who are listening to this podcast, you are not in financial crisis. Like you're fine, right? You've got a roof over your head. Okay, sometimes things might get tight, but you're actually okay, right? So I just want you to really connect with the evidence that, oh, wait, yes, I'm still able to pay my bills. I'm able to do my grocery shopping every day. It's okay, right? Like I want you to look for where things with money are okay, right? Like, yes, it would be great to have more money, but you actually do have your basics covered. Do you have your basics covered, right? Like, look for evidence of that and make it actually obvious to yourself. Like, write it down if you need to, right? Yes, enough money to pay groceries. Yes, enough money to pay off the bills this week. Yes, right? There's enough money to meet my needs this week, essential needs. And then the next thing that I want you to do is take full responsibility for your circumstances. Now, this isn't to dismiss barriers that you haven't put in place. So maybe there are barriers that are in place with your finances at the moment that have nothing to do with you. For example, your upbringing, prejudices against you, your race, the color of your skin, right? Like that's a real thing. Some of us have obstacles in our life. And when I say some of us, I'm not trying to say I have those obstacles. I'm in a very privileged position. I acknowledge that. But some of us aren't in a privileged position. And so when I say take full responsibility for your circumstances, I'm not trying to dismiss that, okay? But for the circumstances that you can control, take responsibility for those, all right? Because when you fully take the reins of your life, then you are in a position to make change. So one of the conversations I had with one of the wonderful women who came to Uncapped was she identified that she was undercharging, and she could really see that. And there was other stuff involved in that conversation, but I want to use that as an example because no one else can make her charge more money. Only she can do that. And when you take responsibility for those things financially, then you can make change, right? So she needed to take responsibility for the fact that, yes, she's not actually charging what she could be charging, and she's suffering financially because of that, right? And that is in her power to change. Likewise, like if you are frequently overspending on things that actually aren't that important to you, or it's not where you want your money to flow, and you're doing it unintentionally, that is stuff that you can take full responsibility for, right? If your mortgage rates are rising and you're finding that you're under pressure to pay your mortgage at a higher rate, what can you do about that? Can you ring the bank? Can you ask for a rate review, right? Can you change it to interest only for a period of time? Like, I'm not saying that to do that, but it's just take responsibility, okay? And that can be hard. But when you take responsibility, then you have the power to change. Okay, next step is see worry for what it really is. It's useless. Worry presents itself as something that appears to be helpful because we are mulling over something in our mind continuously. So it feels like we're doing work. It feels like we're actually doing something, right? But we're not. No action is taking place. If you are sitting and worrying about your mortgage that has gone up, and yet you have not looked at your expenses, you haven't rung the bank, just thinking about it and worrying will produce in nothing. No change. It will just make you feel terrible. Now, when I first learnt this was shocking for me because I kind of felt like worrying was something that was like I sort of felt a bit productive almost when I was worrying. But it's not. It really just makes you feel worse and nothing happens. So here is something that may help you if you are stressing about money or worrying about money, is whatever the situation is, imagine worst case scenario. Okay. Now, you might be thinking, what the F? Why would I do that? Now, this is why, because when you imagine on purpose, like with intention, the worst case scenario, then you can ask yourself, well, what would I actually do if that happened? And I promise you, you will have an answer for that, right? So I don't know how many times things have happened with, money situations or whatever, where, like something will happen, for example, like with a client and they have a slow month and then their brain starts going crazy. Like, oh my gosh, that's it. What if my business just folds now and I'm never going to get any more clients and it's just, this is it. This is the end, right? And then it's like, okay, well, what's the worst case scenario? And then client says, oh, well, my business doesn't make any money and I have to close my business. And I'm like, okay, well, what would you do in that situation? I'm like, well, I would go out and get a job, right? Now, I'm not saying that they want to go out and get a job or that that's the most ideal way that they want to live their life. But actually, if the worst case scenario happened, they already know a solution for how they would handle that. And that can give you a lot of peace and stop you spinning and stressing because you already actually know what you would do if the worst case scenario happened. Okay, so that's first step. But then I want you to start imagining best case scenario, because here's the thing, when you're worrying and stressing, you are actually just accessing your imagination. That's a key word there, imagination. You are literally making shit up in your brain, right? You're imagining the worst that can happen. You're stressing about something that hasn't actually happened yet. So you're getting worried and stressed ahead of time about something that may not ever happen. So what I want to offer to you is if you're going to get worried and stressed about something, strike that, reverse that. You're a Willy Wonka fan? You'll get it if you are. If you don't, you know. If you're going to imagine something, imagine best case scenario. Like, what if you put your prices up and all your clients were like, oh yeah, I always thought you didn't charge much money. Totally happy to pay you this. And then you started getting more business because you did that. Right? I mean, you might be thinking, yeah, whatever, Meaghan. But I want to suggest to you that when you are worrying and stressing, you're literally making that shit up in your brain. So if you are going to put time and effort into making stuff up, why don't you make up stuff that gives you the amazing result that you want? Now, I'm not saying that you're going to get that result. I can't guarantee that, but you will probably be in a much better financial situation if you are not stressing and worrying about money, right? And that you are actually accessing solutions in your mind and looking at best case scenario. Because if we go back to that example that I gave you at the start of the podcast about my friend who had been feeling really stressed about money, that has actually influenced what's been going on in her business, because she hasn't been attracting clients because she's been stressed, right? I mean, it makes sense, right? Who are you more likely to want to work with? Like when you go into a cafe and someone's like, hey, how you going? And they're all friendly, and you want to go to that cafe, right? Not the cafe where they're stressed out and, running around worrying about things. You're sort of like, oh, I don't know, I don't like the vibe here. I might go to the cafe next door. So she could have, so I don't want to contradict myself, but I probably just am, is that, yes, okay, don't make yourself wrong for stressing or worrying about money, but remember step 2, don't dwell in it. So you want to acknowledge that it's happening, it's okay, but then put your attention on solutions. Put your attention on, well, what if best case scenario happened? What might that look like? And be in that energy of possibility and new outcomes. And that is how you stop worrying and stressing about money. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is easy, but I am suggesting that it's simple. Okay? Acknowledge that you're stressed. Don't make yourself wrong for that, but then don't dwell in it. Give yourself some comfort. Look for evidence for where you are okay financially. Start putting attention on that. Don't give the lack and the scarcity and the worry and the stress more attention than you're giving to sufficiency and where you have enough and solutions and possibilities and best case scenario. All right, you got this. If you are feeling worried or stressed about money, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. Nothing has gone wrong, but just be really intentional. Is that how you want to be feeling about money? I'm guessing no. So take full responsibility for your circumstances and acknowledge where things with money are okay. Put attention and on that, look for the evidence for where things with money are working out. Like, yes, I've got enough money every week to buy food. Yep, I'm paying for my kids' school fees. Yep, that's okay. My money's coming in still, but partner's money has reduced. All right, but look for where it is working. Put attention on that, and then start intentionally imagining best case scenario and start taking action. Okay? You've got this. Stressing about money feels terrible. And my gosh, I think I've spent a lifetime doing that. And it's enough. I do not for 1 second want to suggest that your stress or worry about money does not feel really real. And that's why I've said at the start, acknowledge it, right? Because it is linked to our survival and it's very normal to feel that way. But you need to do the work to pull yourself out of that, because worrying and stressing about money is not going to help you make more money. It just disguises itself like it's going to help you. So use what I've told you in this podcast to bring yourself out of it and keep skipping along. Nothing's gone wrong. Be intentional. Keep showing up with money how you want to show up with money. Okay? Imagine best case scenario. All right. I love you. You got this. Until I get in your ears again next week, have an amazing week. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Money Mindful podcast. For future episodes, be sure to subscribe. Ready to take the next steps? Creating your money and life goals can be super challenging if you don't have a process to follow. Get my free course that will help you get unstuck, clarify your goals, and get you going. For more info, go to meaghanjsmith.au.